Hello everyone, my name is Thomas Bailey and I'm a CSPC Programme Committee volunteer. We're about to start the panel entitled From Research to Reality, Accelerating Quantum Network Technologies to Secure Canada's Competitive Advantage, organised by Simon Fraser University, I think in collaboration with the National Research Council. This year, CSPC provides simultaneous translation and closed captions for all panels in both French and English. Scan the QR code on the banner to download the app and access subtitles in your preferred language. Please use your own device and headphones. We do have the conference app, as I'm sure everyone is aware by this point. If you haven't yet, feel free to download it. Please remember to tweet about your favorite events and panels at the conference using @SciencePolicy and hashtag CSPC 2024. Finally, please don't forget to fill out the evaluation survey for each session this afternoon in the program app or by scanning the QR code displayed on each session slide using the session number shown on the screen. Your feedback helps us to improve the conference for next year. Enjoy the panel, and thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dugan O'Neill, and I'm the Vice President, Research and Innovation at Simon Fraser University, and I'll be serving as the moderator for our panel today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on land that's been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from time immemorial. In particular, we acknowledge the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation, and it's a privilege to gather in a beautiful place like this. So thank you for joining us. I'll get to introducing our panelists in just a moment. I want to mention that we will be using Slido during this session. And so if we can show a slide with the QR code for people to log into. So if you have a look at that QR code, you want to ask questions or you want to respond to some of the poll questions we might be asking throughout, then please do so. Of course, this room, we also have microphones and things like that. We won't force you to use Slido to ask a question at the end if you want to actually stand at a microphone and ask your own question. So part of my task, in addition to introducing our panelists and asking a few questions, is to set some context about why quantum networking is important. So to get there, I'm going to start with quantum computing. And so quantum computing exploits the properties of quantum mechanics in order to do computing, which sounds like a simple enough statement. And if you are someone who is very familiar with all of the properties of quantum mechanics, it's probably self-explanatory. If you're not someone who explains superposition and entanglement at dinner parties, then you're still very welcome at today's session, and you'll be able to ask questions and participate fully. We're not assuming that you come with a background in quantum networking and quantum computing. There are some things, however, that it's useful to know going into the conversation. One of those things is that there are some things that are easier to do on a quantum computer than on a classical computer. So when quantum computing was first proposed back in the 1980s, that thing that was proposed to be easier to do on a quantum computer is to simulate a quantum system. So at Simon Fraser University, we're the host of one of the big national supercomputers in partnership with the Digital Research Alliance of Canada, and it's called CEDAR. And I would bet that if I log into CEDAR at any given time and I check who's using it and what they're using it for, that a significant fraction of the resources are going towards the simulation of quantum systems. And that can be material scientists looking for some breakthrough new material in a clean tech study, or it could be folks looking for new drug designs and seeing how the molecules that they're creating would interact with the human body. So there are going to be real practical societal benefits from using a quantum system, like a quantum computer, to simulate other quantum systems. But maybe more relevant to our discussion today is that there are certain other types of operations that are much easier to do on a quantum system than on a quantum computer than a classical computer, including the factoring of large numbers, which is the basis, the The fact that that's hard to do on a classical computer is the basis of the encryption schemes we use to protect our data, our banking data, our national secrets, all sorts of data that we don't want just in anyone's hands. So as quantum computing becomes more practical and more available, the need to develop a different approach to networking and to protecting our data grows. And if you're like me, and every time you open your phone and check your Google News feed, you have some breakthrough on quantum computing or quantum networking showing up near the top, it can be hard to track down what's really important, how close are we to actually having to worry about quantum computers cracking all of our passcodes. And just in the last couple of weeks, a couple of stories that have popped up in my news feed. One of them is of a Chinese research team that used Canada's D-Wave quantum annealer to break 50-bit RSA encryption, made the news with a splash. Just in the last 2 days, Microsoft and Atom Computing announced that they have a 24 logical qubit system, error-corrected system, that they're actively using now and plan to launch a commercial version of by the end of 2025. But these kinds of announcements are coming almost literally every day. That doesn't mean that we have quantum computers today that are cracking our passwords, but it does mean that we're moving gradually from quantum computing and networking being a basic science pursuit to, let's say, a concern, a technical accomplishment or a concern of relatively few people, to being a technological inevitability that will be relevant to all of society in the not too distant future. And in fact, we even hear now quite a bit of discussion of phrases like harvest now, decrypt later, or store now, decrypt later, that people could be out there today harvesting encrypted data that they can't decrypt today, but they expect that it's not so far off that they'll be able to crack the encryption. So what all of this means is that we need a different approach to network security and to building networks around the world. That can mean new cryptographic standards. It can mean post-quantum cryptography. It could mean building new quantum networks. That's both a threat, and so far I've been characterizing it as a threat in what I've been giving in my introduction, but it's also a tremendous opportunity for a country that has expertise, the history that Canada has in quantum information science, and the will to go out and innovate. So quantum networking, in terms of getting the definitions down, is just connecting quantum processors across great distances. It could be through fiber optic cables, it could be through satellites, it could be through combinations of the two, in much the same way that classical networking is connecting classical processors across great distances using some of the same technologies. A core difference, though, is that in a quantum network, if a listener tries to eavesdrop on communication going back and forth across that network, then the act of observing, the act of eavesdropping changes the quantum state. It's a very quantum thing to do, is to acknowledge the role of the observer in affecting the quantum state. And that means you can't spy without getting caught if you're trying to see things in the middle. So this provides, a quantum network then would provide a method of communication which is more secure against quantum attacks, but also against classical attacks or any kind of attack on our data sources. So Canada has been at the forefront of research into quantum computing, also into quantum networking and cryptography. And in fact, 2024 is the 40th anniversary of BB84. BB84 is the first quantum cryptography protocol, and the BB are the initials of the two co-inventors, and one of those co-inventors is Gilles Brassard at the University of Montreal. So we have been in the quantum cryptography game since its invention here in Canada. And we still have tremendous strength in the academic sector and a vibrant group of startup companies from right across the country, including some hardware companies like Photonic and Xanadu that are well known around the world. We also have a national quantum strategy that has 3 missions defined. The first one is around quantum computing, and it's to secure Canadian leadership in the development and use of quantum computing for the benefit of Canadian industry, governments, and citizens. And the second is the one we're going to be focusing on in our panel today, and that's to ensure the privacy and cybersecurity of Canadians through a national secure quantum communications network and a post-quantum cryptography initiative. And the third one is about quantum sensing, to enable the government and key industries to be developers and early adopters of new quantum sensing technologies. So as the world expands its quantum programs, Canada must continue to invest and innovate in order to stay ahead, and our national quantum strategy shows us where we are intending to invest in the future. The Government of Canada has allocated $360 million so far in funding to ensure that Canada remains a leader in quantum research, innovation, and commercialization. And a study from the National Research Council of Canada indicates that by 2045, the quantum sector is expected to represent a $139 billion industry in Canada, more than 200,000 jobs, and potentially up to 3% of our GDP. So the stakes are high, and part of the title of this panel is moving from research to reality. The reality is not so far into the future as it once was, certainly, and as we may have thought it would be even a couple of years ago. So today we're going to hear from 5 expert panelists who will share how we can capitalize on our national quantum strategy and support a made in Canada technologies. We're going to start our panel with opening remarks from each panelist. Then I'm going to facilitate a conversation among the panelists, and then we'll open it up for questions. We'll use Slido throughout to engage you in the conversation and to ask some questions. So if we can switch to the slide that has the first Slido question on it. And the first question for the audience is, how well would you rate your familiarity and knowledge of Canada's quantum ecosystem? So just to get an idea of whether we're a room full of quantum experts or a room full of folks here to learn about the strategy and how we're moving forward. But with that, and while you're thinking about the answer to that question and entering it, I'm going to have a seat and introduce each of our panelists and ask them then to introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with Shohini Ghose. Shohini Ghose is a physics and computer science professor at Wilfrid Laurier University. Her research focuses on quantum computation and communication. She's a member of Canada's Quantum Advisory Council, overseeing the National Quantum Strategy. She is also the Chief Technology Officer at the Quantum Algorithms Institute, an organization based in British Columbia working with government, academia, and industry to improve quantum literacy and technology adoption. So, Shohini, please tell us how you became involved with quantum computing and what you see as the most exciting aspect of Canada's quantum potential, commercially, socially, or otherwise.
Wow, how much time do you have? So great to be here. So I started out, like most physics students, focused on doing a PhD back when there was no field, actually, called quantum computing. I was in one of the early research groups that started exploring this thing called quantum information processing, meaning connecting all of quantum physics, which of course has existed for over a century, to ideas from computer science. So it was literally, back then, it was like, open up a computer science textbook and look at things that were being done and said, hey, how can we do it using quantum theory? So that was a very exciting time. I was very lucky to be starting out at that time on my PhD program. And eventually, by the time I finished, that's how I was able to be part of those early discussions and sort of early days of thinking about where this field would go. This was actually before all these companies also started showing interest, IBM, Google, and I think there was a significant shift once IBM announced its platform for actually being able to go online and try out this small toy quantum computer. Early days, it was just 5 qubits, and then later they kept increasing the number of qubits. So I think that, as far as I remember, was a real change in the way the awareness about this technology shifted, as well as this potential started being taken seriously. So going back to the question of the reality, I know we're going to talk about the potential of this, but the reality is that a large-scale, fault-tolerant, error-corrected quantum computer of the future, that is absolutely a weapon. And that is exactly what drove the initial kinds of research and development, because this is about the huge threat it poses to all of our encryption systems. And that is really where this whole area of quantum communication and networking really plays a big role, because if we wanted to continue to communicate securely, keep our data private, we have to address this big issue. And I think in the immediate future, we will be thinking about this very, very complex current network we have around the world, all the ways that we transmit information, store information, generate information. All of that now has to be thought of as being vulnerable because of this, for example, harvest now, decrypt later kind of attack. So the threat is right now. Even though we don't have quantum computers, the threat is immediate because our data already is vulnerable. So that's kind of worrying, but luckily, as Duke mentioned, we have potential to shift over to a whole different approach, in fact, to encryption and communication. And to me, that's the exciting part. The first exciting step was, what it usually is. It's an exciting idea. And the idea is actually quite a revolutionary shift, going from thinking about encryption algorithmically. Basically, that means use very hard math problems like factoring to do encryption, shifting from that to the idea that we don't use mathematics and algorithms or computation, but we use physics, the laws of physics itself for encryption. And that's a huge revolutionary shift. And that's really the very first sort of real protocol based on that kind of an approach was by Bennett and Brassard in 1984, now called BB84, quantum key distribution. It's a way to avoid doing any kind of calculations to encrypt data. You create these secret keys where the reason the information is safe is because you harness the laws of quantum physics. One of these outcomes of these very weird laws based on superposition and entanglement, which we won't go into, one of the weird outcomes of this is that you cannot copy quantum information. And that can be a bad thing depending on what kind of application you have, but it can be a good thing when you're trying to keep information secure. So based on that, there are now these protocols that we know where what's really exciting is that even if we go far into the future when we have large-scale quantum computers, if we have moved on into this new kind of networking protocol, then we can actually stay secure no matter how much computational power we have. As long as, of course, we implement these kinds of new encryption protocols based on physics in a way that is actually secure. And that's a big challenge. So the exciting part is that we have these opportunities to build out new kinds of communication systems, and they allow for actually enacting very interesting networked quantum computing protocols where you have remote quantum processors in various locations, and you use quantum networking to be able to do secure distributed cloud computing. So that's another exciting opportunity that this offers that I'm excited to explore more. And doing interesting communication protocols, it's always fun to think back when I was a kid. I used to watch Star Trek and see all this teleportation as the sci-fi thing. And now I write papers about controlled and quantum teleportation and things like this. So that's where we've got to, just in my lifetime. So imagine what can happen in the future. So I'll leave it at that, but I have a lot more to say.
Okay, great. I'm glad. So thank you, Shohini. And next up, we'll go down to Amy and then come back to Thomas. So Amy Gunther is Acting Program Director of the Internet of Things, Quantum Sensors Challenge Program at the National Research Council of Canada. She engages across research centers and challenge programs to lead the quantum communications theme within the High Throughput and Secure Networks Challenge Program. She has over a decade of experience communicating quantum science to a variety of audiences, from children to policymakers. So Amy, same question for you. How did you become involved in quantum computing, and what do you see as the most interesting or exciting aspect?
Quantum computing. Well, it was sort of obvious. Quantum? That sounds really smart. Wow, I want to be smart. Lasers? Quantum and lasers together? People are building and technologies with quantum and lasers? Done. So in that sense, coming from a generation or so back, not at the forefield of it, not just to, or I'm ahead, that there was exciting to see the momentum was already moving in the forward direction there. Talking about BB84 protocol there, that was like the first quantum technology demonstrated. That was the tech we had at the time. So it was already there and done already. So of course, what we've done since then is just move on and really spread out from just some of those basic possible with our terrible technologies at the time, or terrible enabling tools, to actually move into multiple application space beyond quantum computing, which gets most of the air in the room, though very important with some significant applications that Shohini mentioned, and other more drug discovery, et cetera. But also what we can see in the applications of sensing, and what can we do if we connect it all together with networking, and what new things we can gather from that. So I think there's a lot of, in the year 2024, I think we have a lot of exciting stuff to push forward.
Excellent, thank you. Thomas, you're up next. So Thomas Genuine is the Canada Excellence Research Chair in Global Quantum Internet Systems at Simon Fraser University. He's working closely with Photonic with a mission to build capable and scalable quantum communication technology for long-range and satellite quantum networks. Dr. Genuine also leads the Canadian satellite mission KeySat, which aims to demonstrate quantum communication between space and ground with stations across Canada and internationally. So Thomas, same question to you. How did you become involved with quantum computing? And what do you see as the most exciting aspect of a quantum network in Canada?
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks, Dugan. It's great to be here. I got involved in quantum. I was an undergrad student in physics, and I was actually interested in all kind of topics and areas across the field. But I got stuck with quantum in particular. I was very initially interested in the fundamental questions, like Dugan so nicely showed in the introduction, or discussed, like entanglement and superposition, and those kind of aspects. But what really struck me was that there is a bit of a dual use type of scenario where we have these fundamental questions, and to this day there are still some mysteries within quantum physics, in the foundations of quantum physics, and fully understanding it, even though the theory is really well described and proven. And on one side, and at the same time, there is all of this great technology and industry that is developing now around those very fundamental concepts. So what was 100 years ago basic philosophy discussion, right? Nowadays is going to be a big industry. So that's what got me so interested, and in particular, I'm very excited about. So I was always interested in long distance quantum correlations, quantum states. Even as a graduate student already, I got involved in long distance teleportation or long distance entanglement, and my big passion is how can we do this at a global scale? So how can we go further? So that's how I got involved in doing this with satellites. And we're very fortunate to have a satellite mission here in Canada, but there's a lot of international work in this field as well. And it's very exciting times. And soon we'll have the quantum internet. Yeah.
Yes, good.
Yeah, thanks.
No promises about exactly when we'll have a quantum internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometime.
And next up, Lisa Lambert. I'll try to change slides at the right time now. So Lisa Lambert is the inaugural CEO of Quantum Industry Canada and a pioneer of collaboration at the intersection of science, technology, and society. QIC is the national consortium uniting quantum technology companies and organizations dedicated to unlocking the full potential of Canada's quantum sector. So to Lisa, please tell us how you became involved in quantum computing and what you see as the most exciting aspect of Canada's quantum potential.
I may be the imposter on the panel because I'm not a quantum physicist or an engineer, and I happened into this by accident. I've always loved science, technology. As a child, was the kid who would look up at the stars at night and just get lost out there with my mom coming to tap me on the shoulder because my hands were so cold. But I went into neuroscience for undergrad and did science communication for graduate school and found myself in Ottawa actually working in science, technology, and innovation policy, and had the opportunity then to go take up a post at the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics. At the time building the expansion of the Stephen Hawking Center, and had a really fun role there working into special projects. My first week there, I got a tour of the Institute for Quantum Computing by Raymond Laflamme, who was the director there at the time and a real pioneer in quantum computing. And over 15 years ago now, I saw my first quantum computer. And I remember walking into IQC, into the lab, and seeing what I thought were these giant beer kegs. And I was like, interesting place. And Raymond was quick to point out, these are not beer kegs, these are quantum computers. And what was absolutely state of the art at the time, by comparison now, is just primitive. It's incredible to see how far we've come. There's also an experiment going on between Perimeter Institute and Institute for Quantum Computing at the time. Actually, up in Raymond's office, the Perimeter Institute, there was this weird little machine that was pointed through the window, and they had to go drill a hole through this very fancy glass to get this over and pointing over at IQC. And that was Alice, the name of that detector, and Bob lived over at IQC. And it was a quantum key distribution experiment that they were doing at the time. And I often had to explain what this was to folks that was going. Thomas was over at IQC at the time trying to drive around a truck to catch photons from space and working on early space QKD and entanglement. So it was just a really captivating place to be. From there, I got pulled out west to join TRIUMPH, Canada's Particle Accelerator Center, that was going through some interesting things at the time, and then moved on into tech transfer and the business environment for a few years. And then Quantum Industry Canada was coming into its own as well. And a lot of the research that I worked with were now CEOs of different quantum technology companies. And it was just incredible to see the progress. And there was the opportunity to come back into the sector and help out. And it was a really exciting opportunity. So just over a year ago, I joined that. And I feel so privileged I get to work with the premier quantum technology companies here in Canada. And Canada's home to the second highest number of quantum SMEs globally. It's a really, really vibrant ecosystem. And getting to work with all the supporting actors and players with that. And that includes the Numana test bed over in Quebec, which is called Kirk with a Q. So Captain Kirk is what it gets inspiration from. And seeing some of the endeavors that are coming together at the intersection of quantum computing, quantum communications, quantum sensing, the enabling technologies as well, and also post-quantum cryptography, which is a technology and a solution that's here today. The standards came out for that just back in August, and it's something that people need to be implementing now and replacing their cryptography, because the current RSA cryptography we use today is from the 1970s. So it's a little bit tired to come into it, and we need to be getting onto the path of moving towards a quantum-ready future. A quantum-ready today is what I would say.
Thank you. I didn't realize we had the second most SMEs of any country.
Yeah.
We're a quantum powerhouse. So we're getting to the to some of the question and answer parts for the panel before going to the audience questions. Maybe, if I remember correctly, we have another question for the audience here too, to tell us how you're involved with quantum in Canada. So if you're plugged into Slido and answering the questions, there's an opportunity for you to participate there as well. But this first question is panel-wide, so I'll ask each of you, but I'm going to start with Amy. What do you see as the most prominent barriers to Canada's development of a quantum network over the next 10 to 15 years, and what do we need to do to overcome them?
Yeah, this is just hard, as we see here. Canada has a really excellent classical photonics industry. We have a really strong backbone there, but Shohidi mentioned this earlier here, we can't copy and paste. Classical photonics, let's just jam up the power or just amplify it later if it gets lost along the way. We cannot do this in quantum. So this is a technological difficulty we have to overcome. And we've been working at it globally for the last 20 years to look at some of these components to get them to the exquisite high enough efficiency or to be able to transfer those delicate quantum states from one, say, photon to another, to a different other system. So that has been something that is one thing that's going to go there. Then resources here, like we see in the quantum computing world here, that's been a lot of money that's been thrown into that to get it to where it is today. And same with quantum networking. This isn't something that could be done cheaply here. If you want to look at this at a true scale, to get these types of exquisite equipment, this stuff is, that's one of the things that's been challenging from a science policy space here. There's the equipment asks. I see this in the program I run here for the grants and contributions that my challenge programs can support. A large chunk of that needs to go towards these enabling equipments, cryostats, your beer keg, the lasers and all these things. This is a true challenge. And then also the coordination here. This is a national vision type of thing to pull this off here. To be able to do, like as the National Quantum Strategy's mission says right there, can we do a cross-country type of secure network there? That's going to force a lot of alignment to get folks to work together. It's going to take will. And that's something that is a bit challenging, though. One thing that Canada is good at, besides SMEs, is we're small in people. We actually have a chance to actually coordinate well and actually bring folks together there versus some of the other, say the US or other countries where it's just there's so many. How do you get those ducks in a row? We actually have a real shot and opportunity here in Canada to be able to, act coherently. This is quantum. We want to be coherent. So this is something that the National Research Council has been actively involved in here. We have researchers across the country, over 4,500 research of staff, and half of them being technical scientists. Our lifeblood is the 500 students in HQP and the different research centers looking towards this. Where we've put a lot of emphasis to try to shape and help and support the ecosystem as we've been moving forward has been with these challenge program constructs that I mentioned. So back in 2019, the High Throughput Secure Networks Challenge Program, I lead the quantum communications theme that allows the academic or the startup to collaborate with federal or our national labs in some of these areas. And that's had some key support of the KeySat mission along the way with the Canadian Space Agency. A few years later, the sensing program, that's the one I lead right now, that and our applied quantum computing were both funded by the National Quantum Strategy under the commercialization pillar. So we've been able to, in the sensing, to find sensing applications towards defense, natural resources, health and biomedical. And then soon, what we're hoping to go towards to address some of these challenges, both a little bit on the resource side, a little bit with maybe the coordination side, and land on the technical side there is with the launch of a new quantum challenge program, National Research Council challenge program called Quantum Internetworking. We love this quantum internet thing. It's going to be in the name and everything here. And that's something that as we'll be developing it in the next multiple months there, we want to work coherently with everyone to kind of get there. This is still going to be really hard, and it's going to be something that's going to involve the whole country to kind of rally together with. But this is something at the National Research Council, I think, we hope to really move the needle a bit.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Other panelists want to address the question, the most prominent barriers to the development of a quantum network over the next 10 to 15 years. Lisa?
Speaking to the coordination piece, and what are all the things that we need to coordinate with this? I very much agree with that. A way that I kind of think about a quantum network is trying to think about if we were to build a transportation network, what would we need? What would be some of the pieces in that? So first you need the roads or the train tracks or the piece. You need the physical infrastructure. So you need the quantum infrastructure that's going to go with this. You need the rules of the road. So what are the protocols and standards that are going to come into this as well? You need trained operators. I think of this as the quantum workforce. that are going to come and maintain or be the train conductors, whatever pieces on this. You need the passengers and the shipping companies is the way to think about the users that are going to be on this as well. And then you need coordinated planning. So whether it's the transportation planners or urban planners that are going to come together in this, what does that look like for a network at this? So it's a real moonshot kind of project to do, but it's one that I think with Canada, from our size, population size, we're relatively small and we're quite collaborative in nature. So I think there's a real opportunity with there, but we do need to be looking at cross-provincial collaboration, cross-sectoral collaboration, really bringing all these pieces together. And I actually think some people might look at our physical size of our country as being a barrier, but I think it's a real opportunity actually to be able to prove something out at the scale of our geographical country size. So it's a fun one to look at within that. But if you look at those components, I think you can understand a little bit of the barriers or challenges a bit more.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Others? Okay.
So maybe one extra comment to add here is I think so we're talking big developments, big projects for these quantum networks, and I think building a community around this kind of a strategy and a direction, I think that's really important. The National Quantum Strategy is doing a really good job at trying to foster ideas and direction, but we all really hope this can move forward and we can get more of that. And I think that's in particular what is important. And KeySat is this quantum communication satellite mission is one example of a big singular project which allows us to make a huge leap in technology, but also in bringing community together. And we need more of that. And I think that's a bit of a barrier, how to identify what is the next big moonshot to work on. It doesn't have to be a satellite. It could be anything in this space. But they need to be defined and then also supported.
Excellent. Thank you.
So I'll add a couple more. There's always so many barriers. I love Lisa's analogy of the transportation network. But to build those, train lines or airports or whatever for your network, you need fabrication facilities, you need manufacturing, you need a supply chain, and then particularly in this kind of emerging technology, a lot of those kinds of facilities may not exist in Canada, which means we need international agreements. We also need a way to connect all of our existing legacy systems. We're not just going to throw out the current internet. I love the future quantum internet, but we need it to actually be talking to our current systems. And a lot of them are hard to sort of, transition out, particularly now where we have all of the, the so-called Internet of Things. We have mobile, the Internet of Drones. So we have to think about how all of those pieces, all of which have very different computational capabilities, different levels of security features that you could build into the hardware versus the software, all of that has to be somehow plugged in. So that's another piece. And then ultimately, of course, yes, all of our network in Canada might eventually get to that point, but we might be sending our banking information out of the country. That's another point of vulnerability. So not only do we have to figure out how we do all of this within Canada, we have to figure out how it works globally. So, no big deal. We're working on it.
Just a quick follow-up on that one. Of course, this is one of those technologies that is considered sensitive by just about everyone. It makes sometimes international collaborations challenging. Any comments on the challenge of international collaboration in this particular sector?
I'll start.
Sure.
We have every day at universities the practical challenge of finding students or just HQP, and with the current sort of landscape globally, several pools of great students and postdocs and so on are getting more difficult, right? Not to name countries in this room, but it's getting harder to hire from certain areas and countries. And that is definitely one such collaborative block against collaboration, I guess.
So attraction of talent from those countries. Have there been any barriers to collaboration with, say, faculty members in some of those countries? Is it a chill on that kind of collaboration?
There is a list. There's a list posted, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Thomas, our next question. starts with you. Many countries are investing heavily towards demonstrating a quantum network. How can Canada be a leader in this space? What is the advantage of being a leader in this space? And what do you see as the key technologies where we should increase our efforts to become a leader?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, lots of great questions. So I'd like to start this off by looking back at the big satellite project that I worked on, KeySat, which was, I think, a really good example of what the benefits is for Canada to do this. So when I came to Canada 15 years ago from Austria, I was just literally surprised by all of the existing know-how and technology that was here for space technology, photonics, information technology, but not quantum, just in general. And so we were able to garner all of this existing expertise and know-how and channel it into building a new system which can do quantum communication. So what I like to say is we never had to build new capacity. We were just reshaping the existing capacity to channel it towards such a project. And now these industry partners are engaged in startups, building commercial such kind of communication satellites, or they have an international edge when working on projects internationally in US or Europe, for example. So I think this just shows that Canada has a lot of capacity and know-how in engineering and science required for this kind of technology that can be repurposed, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's very good. The other advantage for Canada to engage in quantum network in general is the size of the country, right? And it's quite, a lot of areas are quite sparsely populated, right, or developed. So there's, infrastructure-wise, there's certain areas which are very hard to reach. And that's where quantum communication could really help with securing communication to those areas. Think of the north or other remote areas, providing secure communications and data transfer, or to some level, quantum internet can also help make communications more efficient, or there might be certain applications where it can help. So internationally, there's a lot happening. Others have also noticed this and seen this. In Europe, there is a few years ago already, they pronounced the incentive, the European Commission, to switch all of their sort of government communication and funding into a quantum safe methodology, including using quantum key distribution. And now they are building quantum networks. There are several countrywide quantum networks that are already established in Europe, and the next stage will be making the across Europe kind of connectivity. So Canada has a great opportunity to be a strong player in this area. As I mentioned, the capacity, the technical and scientific capacity is here and is being advanced further as we speak. Quantum computing companies are here, and the next level will be interfacing the long distance channels with the quantum computers that are being developed. And Canada could be well set up to be a major exporter of such technologies. Rather than having to import it from elsewhere to use it here, why don't we build it here and export it? And to Lisa's point, there's lots of startups already, and actually bigger companies too, right? In quantum communication. So that's a bit of a monologue. Yeah, I think.
Okay, great.
I'll leave it there,
you, Thomas.
Yeah.
To the rest of the panel, anyone else would like to comment on what's Canada's advantage and what advantage should we be seeking in this area, or why should we be seeking to build an advantage in this area? Yeah.
Quantum networking is really interesting in the context of all of quantum technologies, if you look at it. And it's one that being able to distribute this quantum information, which is very, very delicate, it's really key for unlocking the full potential of quantum computers. If we think of how important networking is with computers that we use today, but also for our communication security that goes in. There's also technology we haven't talked about much, but with Amy's, with quantum sensors, and be able to have networks of quantum sensors that are communicating with information. So there's a lot to this. I kind of think of quantum communications as being at the heart of the quantum ecosystem, other pieces that are there. So I think it's one that if we can choose kind of where to play strategically, this is an interesting one. Again, I really think this is kind of a moonshot project to be looking at with that, but I think our sweet spot within our size to be able to coordinate is one to rally around, and KeySat is a really good example for a start within that. And then if you look at our capabilities here in Canada, I mean, we've got quantum SMEs that are doing this, but if you look at the enabling technology that's needed underneath this, we have a lot of really good strengths from what we have in the photonics sector. A lot, not all of it applies, but some of it does, certainly does, in telecommunications and other pathways. So it's one where I see where we could be building on our strengths in this area. And we also have a lot of really great quantum computing companies that this could help really benefit as they're working on distributing this. Some of them already are working in the space too, and we're starting to see some of the telecommunications providers come in. There's recently an announcement between TELUS and Photonic, with TELUS letting Photonic use some of their fiber line. We've got Bell involved with the test bed that I mentioned over in Quebec as well. So we're starting to see that. It's early days, but I think it's an area where there's a lot of opportunity and there could be a lot of payoff for Canada as well, and be one that would put us in a really key place as a trusted partner globally with our key allies as well, which I think is a really important consideration as we're in a landscape right now where geopolitics are becoming more and more top of mind.
Excellent. Thank you. Others?
To follow up on that, we've talked about the photonics industry being a key backbone of Canada here. This is something I want that we will be looking to see in our forthcoming program here. I think there's some real strong potential to what of our classical quantum technologies to benefit quantum. We just talked about like raw fiber network type stuff there, but what about all the other amazing stuff that we've been doing classical to help quantum? And I think there's the vice versa here. If we're working on all this exquisite fabrication and all these other things to get this incredibly low loss, high efficiency stuff, how could this help data centers and other classical applications? This area isn't explored much, but I think given Canada's strengths in both, this could be a really interesting area if we can get the two people to speak the same language. I think I'm at a science policy conference here, so I have to talk about policy. So the National Quantum Strategy does have adoption as one of the kind of objectives here for government adoption of these things. We see that defense, their quantum strategy implementation plan that was published last year, they have 4 priorities, and quantum networking is one of them there that they and many other defense organizations to the south and whatnot see as a priority. What can we do if we can connect quantum devices, sensors, whatever, computers, via entanglement? And I think one of the tricky parts is we don't have all the answers yet of what we can do with that. What we do know from the literature is that it will give us enhanced abilities to be able to quantum network sensors, network computers, and I think by trying to get the pull from government and be able to pull some of this stuff there, we might be able to find some of these solutions faster.
Excellent. Thank you.
So maybe I'll just clarify that it's not that we're talking about just connecting quantum devices with quantum networks. All of our existing devices will become more secure because we're talking about transmitting information securely. So even classical information, meaning existing kinds of information, zeros and ones, bits, those can be actually transmitted more securely with a quantum network. So I think we're just going to enhance our existing privacy and security by building that quantum network, even without requiring us to actually also have a quantum computer ready to go. So they're 2 separate things. Just what is
great. Thank you, Shahini. We do have, related to that question, sorry, I think I skipped one here. Yes. So for those of you, and I see there's 15 folks out in the audience participating in our polls. Audience question number 4 is, tell us what you think is Canada's best opportunity to be a leader in quantum. So following on the discussion you just heard. The next question, and I'll start with Lisa on this one. What kind of enabling conditions are needed by Canadian startups and SMEs to not only support the development of critical quantum technologies, but also to support market readiness? And what is industry's role in this space?
Maybe I'll quantum technologies is broad. I'll bring the focus over to networking for this one specifically. Say one, and grateful for the support that we've had from the government in the research side and moving forward with the National Quantum Strategy as well. But a real practicality that companies face is that the funding envelopes that are available are quite small for something like this. And again, in the context of a big moonshot project, it's really difficult if you've got to be stitching little pockets of money together, and sometimes the administrative structure that goes into that for applying and reporting and everything that goes with it. Sometimes that capital can be the most expensive kind of funding that you can be getting. So looking at for projects like this that we realize the significance of networking, where are those envelopes of funds and buckets can go with it? So there's definitely a capital piece that goes with it. Say also for something like this, that big, bold vision, again, I'm pretty bullish about a moonshot project for something like this. I think is also really key to go with it. And it takes collaboration of all different actors. So having that coordinating entity that come into it, I think is a really key piece. A project that I think is a good analogy for it is the Auto Parts Manufacturing Association. Recently had a couple of years ago, actually, they started this initiative called Project Arrow, where they united all the auto parts manufacturers to build mostly Canadian-built EV. I think it was something like 95% Canadian components into it, and a small percentage, some chips they had to get abroad for that. So it's something I think could an entity like QIC perhaps be a coordinating body for that and bring entities together with the Moonshot project that's, with NRC involved and all those other actors or pieces could be one where we've got everyone working together with the telcos, the end users. And I think a challenge with that too is in not aligning all the priorities to go with that as well. And I think if you've got that Moonshot vision, that kind of project could be a nice way to go and ensure that we've got the enabling conditions, but that we're right-sizing things to the scale of the ambition of what's needed here.
Excellent, thank you. Amy?
Just to follow up with what Lisa said there, we saw, was it yesterday morning, at the Innovation Symposium there, that fragmentation of our Canadian funding ecosystem is a challenge. The capital it takes just to be able to figure out who's applicable for what and what's stacking where. And being able to get all these pieces to align is going to be a challenge there. We've started to do some small things in that direction. My program, this Quantum Sensors program, is launched a joint call for proposal with NSERC Alliance. Can we bring the best of each of our programs together? They have the infrastructure, they have the structure to have academics and an end user, a startup or another partner, and we have the ability to bring NRC and a startup and or academic to be able to fund the whole package there. I think more of that type of collaboration. Can we pull in more of our Innovative Solutions Canada procurement type program, innovation procurement? Can we pull the other innovation programs together? And I think to do something as ambitious as a moonshot with the resources we have, both personnel and government national quantum strategy dollar bills, like we have to be working together.
If I can just add to that too, if we get rid of some of the funding around that as well, it's not just traditional funding programs, but if we look at what are tax incentives, then come around this, because that's really meaningful for some of the actors to come into this place and get involved and can encourage the R&D that's needed by some of those players. Or if we can look at what are low interest government-backed loans for some of the companies that are in this, where they're in the fabrication space, or if they've got a purchase order for something in hand, or other ways that we can be working on growing them that aren't super capital dense or capital heavy from a government perspective to be involved, but do de-risk projects significantly and make it a lot easier for, Canada's ultimately an SME landscape, small, medium enterprises, especially in the quantum sector. So how do we make it easier for them to be playing in this? And it's not always just, these big funding programs, but other kinds of innovation policy tools we can put into the mix.
Lisa, just to follow up on that one, on the side of those doing the adopting, is there any comment we can make on what kind of tools or infrastructure or training folks in the wider system might need in order to make the right choice and adopt a quantum technology?
Baseline quantum literacy is a key point for that, learning more about this, and not so much what's a bit or a qubit, or I think sometimes we start with that and it's not always the place, but for them to get a sense of what the use cases are and the possibility and why this matters. And I actually think that's the onus on us, the research industry, to help tell that story better, and that engagement piece, coming together. But that baseline quantum literacy within that, I think, is a really big piece to come into it, and for us to get more towards these demonstrations and other pieces. I think sometimes we think we've got to get to the full solution, but if we can get to a quick, we're 40% of the way there, just enough to almost kind of battle lab, get the sense of what the possibility is, I think can help people imagine and dream a little bit more too, and incentivize people to get curious and lean in and see what's there. Another piece too that in the Canadian landscape I think is an important one, especially from an end user adoption place, is our competition landscape. It really is a trying one from the place that we know Canada's laggards in adopting new technologies as well. And part of that comes into is a lot of our businesses don't have to. They don't really have competition here, and they're in a very cozy environment. So there's some bigger factors that can come into play to also drive that uptake of frontier technologies.
Shohini.
So yeah, just to add to this question of adoption, I think there's three sorts of pieces there that we could work on. One is that, if you, let's say you're somebody in the healthcare sector, you have a lot of expertise on what are the existing bottlenecks, let's say computationally in healthcare, but you don't really know whether quantum applies to that. So I think what's needed is to bring those problems to the table to the quantum experts and build that conversation. That's not really happening. So we need that. But there's also this other layer, which is on the technical side. So there's lots of companies that have, let's say, software engineering departments who would be able to perhaps think about how to build in quantum solutions, provided they have some upskilling. So this is what you were talking about. It's not just basic quantum literacy, but to bring in some of those technical sorts of knowledge, which does not require, by the way, a full PhD in quantum physics. So I think there's ways to tailor that kind of upskilling to be able to get into a problem really quickly and focus right into whatever is the application that is part of your particular sector. And then, of course, the most important piece, though, is that we do need the leadership in all of the different sectors to make this a priority, kind of like what happened with AI, where now in every sector, leadership is focused on that. So the first thing they ask, how are we using AI? So I think we have to get that level of awareness for quantum in order to build the momentum for adoption.
Excellent.
So, three
Thank
pieces.
You. Maybe following up, sorry, I do have a Slido question, right? No, I'm getting ahead of myself. Well, we're giving a sneak preview to the question I'm going to ask Shohini. So Shohini and the rest of the panel, are we cultivating a diverse talent pool that will be sufficient to ensure a robust quantum ecosystem in Canada, both directly in the field and in adjacent technologies? And if not, what do we need to do to improve?
So on the academic front, actually, Canada has always had this huge strength in quantum, and we've had major impact, as we discussed. Really kickstarted this whole field of quantum key distribution, for example, but also in all the other sectors. There's been lots of contributions, leading contributions, breakthroughs from researchers in Canada, and a significant proportion still of publications in this sector comes from Canada. So we have that expertise. We have this really great future workforce being trained by the top researchers in the field, but I don't think we are really tapping into the vast potential talent there is, because we don't actually have diversity in general, certainly in the main fields currently that we recruit from for quantum, which is physics and computer science and mathematics, and these are not very diverse disciplines as yet. So we're leaving out all of this potential talent. That, to me, is sort of a quick fix. We have this opportunity to basically double the future workforce and talent, and if we're not addressing that, then we're just failing at really harnessing everything that we have. And in fact, it's actually a new opportunity. What if we could do that better and build out that kind of training for the future of this sector and show just how diverse and inclusive and innovative it can be? That becomes a gold standard. That's how we become sort of that global exemplar and really set that bar high, and hopefully the rest of the world will follow.
Excellent. Other comments on the talent question? Lisa?
I can add to that. I think there's a lot of misconceptions in quantum, and one of them is that you need a PhD to be in quantum, which is not the case. There was a study recently out of the Chicago Quantum Exchange that was looking at half the workforce in quantum. It's not even require an advanced degree. And there's some other research out there that's looking at forecasting for within 10 years that over 80% of the workforce won't even require a post-secondary degree to be involved in this. So we're seeing it's still a nascent sector, but as the industry is emerging, we're seeing more opportunities within this, that this isn't just something for PhDs in a lab that are coming into it. We need tradespeople to come into this. We need people on the business side coming into this. So it's an opportunity for everyone to come in and be part of this. And we also need all those different perspectives that are going to make this better and really going to help this move from lab to marketplace or from research to reality as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Just to follow up with that, of course, 100% what Shahini just said, and 100% of course to what Lisa said there. We're thinking from a government adoption side there, a lot of the senior leaders of each government department does meet regularly to talk about quantum. What are you doing in quantum here and there? And NRC has the most quantum people in it, I guess, as one would expect here, but there's a lot of places where quantum is written into their strategies to move to, with Natural Resources Canada, Defense, ECCC, a few other ones there we're just looking towards there. I think we have some good opportunities to start bringing some quantum talent to work on some projects together. Announced in the National Quantum Strategy, we have the Quantum Research and Development Initiative. That funding went to government researchers to collaborate within government on quantum. And I think that's sort of what we want. Similar to, like, we need to get the non-quantum folk engaged there. Like, I think for Canada's public policy issues and challenges, I think bringing more of that quantum across the divide to get to the end user experts, I think that will really help accelerate things.
If I can add one more thing also, sorry. The other area that I think we should be focusing on and bringing into this whole quantum discussion is the trades, because we will need plumbing and electricians and construction and HVAC. All of this is part of building a quantum ecosystem, and yet that is not the story that we're telling when we, let's say, recruit students to be enrolling in the trades. If we say, hey, yeah, the trades can lead you into a career in quantum, that's a whole different story. And we're not telling that story. So I think that could be something that's really important to change.
We're starting to, I will say. We've got some of our companies that are hiring directly out of trade schools. And in HVAC in particular, actually, it's a cryogenics company that's doing this out of Edmonton with Nate the school. And there's some others as well that are starting to. I'm having conversations more and more actually with colleges and trade schools who are looking ahead to quantum with their programming. So we've got a lot more to do. I agree with you, but it is starting, which I'm happy to see.
Awesome. Great.
Excellent.
One of my goals within the National Research Council is to get out to all the other research centers. Can we get to the automotive and surface transportation, to the aerospace research centers? Can we get to human health and therapeutics? I think there's some really good potential there.
Excellent. Thomas, did you have something to add?
I had some slightly different kind of aspect here, which is just from a university perspective, it's really difficult to retain students, or after training, let's say they would go abroad again because there's lots of amazing opportunities elsewhere. And even attracting graduate students can be really difficult because it's hard to have a competitive, given the landscape we have with our funding, to have a competitive program, in particular also with the cost of living situation that's going on, right? So we see a lot of that. So that is maybe one of the challenges we do have. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think we're getting to the audience questions part of this discussion. So you should be able to answer some questions through Slido if you like, but we are in a room also with at least one microphone over here. I think that's the only one at the moment. So if you'd like to get set up with that microphone or test my ability to find questions in Slido, either one of those are welcome. In the meantime, while we're getting those questions lined up, I'll just ask, we don't have to wait. I can go straight to our question.
Tace Kreuzberg, Council of Canadian Academies. So Canada, I want to talk a bit about the reality. And Canada has a long history of losing its leads, losing its cutting edge sectors. And my question is, for quantum sector, what are the prospects for Canada to retain our current edge in the future, currently and in the future, when you think about buyouts, when you think about changing government priorities, the scale-up challenges that Canada have? Is there anything intrinsic about the quantum sector that will make it sticky and stay in Canada?
Go ahead, Lisa.
I could say it's a really good question. Thank you for this. I'd say we're at a really critical window right now in the quantum sector. And I think one thing that could help make it sticky is if we actually make the choice that we want to do something bold and ambitious here. And if we realize that what got us here won't get us there. I think sometimes we talk about quantum and we say, oh, we punched above our weight, and pat ourselves in the back and kind of think, fait accompli, c'est tout. That's not the case. All we've done is really got ourselves to the starting line of what is truly a global race right now. And I really think of quantum as an opportunity. What semiconductors have done for Taiwan, that was a choice that Taiwan made and had a bold vision that lasted multiple decades to see that through. We're already a couple decades into this, to be quite honest. Let's see it through and go and actually play in the race within this. And I think another key piece of this too is we really need to stop copying and pasting policies from other parts of the world. Our context is a little bit different, and realizing we're not the scale of the United States when it comes to the financial power that's there, or the people. It is a different thing. It's a different culture as well. And I challenge us to be creative enough and bold enough to maybe get inspiration from different parts of the world, but look at what could a really bold vision be for this in a Canadian context that, again, is not what got us here. Realizing what will get us there is not what we've done so far. We do have to take a different tack.
Yeah, it certainly is a very competitive area. Lots of countries are investing and trying to figure out how to keep Canada at the forefront and keep our talent here is a challenging question. Any others like to respond to that?
I just completely agree. The choices we make today are really going to affect tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'd like to add that quantum technology in particular, I like to say is a relatively it's a big innovation, right? And it needs a lot of science to back all of the developments. But I think it's still a relatively low-cost investment as a whole compared to other big technology. Like think of the semiconductor industry you mentioned, right? That's major investment. And so, yes, it is today's choices and which programs and moonshot projects get defined. And government will have to play a role, let's say, being an early adopter and so on. But I think it's also one where a technology where the return per investment, I think I would like to say is relatively good. Yeah.
Maybe I can just say to it too, it's never going to be any cheaper to invest in quantum.
Yeah.
We're seeing that right now with AI. We had the lead, and I think we're trying to buy our way back into it. And if you look at a $2 billion infrastructure, which is $2 billion is a lot of money, but to play catch up when you're up against one company putting $30 billion into it. But we're at the point, we're at the tip of the spear right now that if we keep going into it, it is, I think, a lot of leverage going forward. But that window, we've got to hit this window, and we've got to make a choice and make a choice soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess also to clarify what we mean by making a choice is about actually making policy decisions around this. I mean, there are other countries, for example, that have restrictions on, let's say, multinational companies who have established any kind of footprint in that country are required to have some level of local ownership in the country. And there's requirements about what can be taken out of the country. We don't have those kinds of laws, and that's a policy question. Should we be having those kinds of discussions around something like quantum? Absolutely. And so maybe this is a good place to discuss this at a policy conference.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, and the topic that comes up a lot is the opportunity, the cost of not pursuing the opportunity. I think that's one that comes up a lot. And I mean, we all maybe followed that example a few years ago about the 5G technology from Huawei, where suddenly they were one of the preferred vendors and so on, right? And switching away is a major effort. And so that was 5G, right? But what if the same happens in quantum communication, where down the road everyone will need it because of the security threat the cybersecurity threat everywhere, and then we have to buy in the technology from outside, and so it's those kind of costs one has to think about, or questions.
Long-term costs,
Yeah.
We do have a number of questions in Slido. So the one with the most votes so far, how would a future quantum internet transform everyday life for Canadians?
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, we already brought up some of the examples, and it's, for example, having better security when you do communication. You could be more assured that your data is secure. This is like for communication, but also there's approaches there to use quantum encryption for data centers and how to store data there more safely. So I think that's a big topic. Where it could impact everyone's life. Because what I send on the internet today, even though it's got the encryption key on top of on my website, this could be stored now and decrypted later. But with quantum, that's not possible.
So certainly identity theft.
Identity theft, or
credit card fraud.
My financial records or my health records and those kind of items could be long-term. Yeah.
Amy?
Going back to my part of my heart's here in quantum sensing. So right now we have quantum magnetometers based in diamond that can measure, say, your heart, or maybe do some brain scans or whatever. What if those were not just individual sensors, but we're able to be connected there? What more can we get from that? How can some of these in the healthcare sector be helpful here? Or I'm thinking about maybe this is more on the natural resources side. If we have other types of sensors being able to be connected, or we even see just connections of fiber with maybe some entangled light going through it. Is that the vibrations happening here? I think there's going to be a lot of different applications. It's not going to be one big one. So Thomas spoke about the big sexy thing is for quantum comms is security, which is very important. And the flip side of that on quantum computing, the scary thing there is breaking RSA. But I think in quantum networking, how is that going to affect Canadians? I think they're going to be seeing this in their different everyday lives, but it's going to be quantum enhanced, maybe not with a capital Q, maybe not branded and hyped as capital Q, but it will be integrated in the future.
I expect Canadians will talk as much about quantum communication as they talk about RSA encryption, which is not at all, but it's necessary. It'll be underneath.
Good point. I mean, it'll be on the back end. So
yes.
A lot of the security applications is not something that we think of. And I'm kind of happy because remember the old days you had to click on that Norton, whatever, the antivirus and keep, refreshing it and things like. We don't have to probably do all that for quantum security, but it'll be there running in the background. In fact, there's already post-quantum, which is like a not quite fully quantum encryption, but it's a different way to encrypt your data already running on your devices, but we don't know it. So yes, it will be transformative, but we won't even know it, most likely.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
If I can just add too, I think, and the security side of it, I don't think can be overstated. I think we take for granted we're in the middle of a lot of cyber warfare right now, and that's a front that we've got some amazing things that happen behind the scenes. So we don't have to worry about them all the time. But that information is vulnerable, and we do need to shift over to this area. But I also really think that quantum networking is really key for realizing the promise of quantum computing. And even if we just hit one use case in that, like for example, one area where quantum computing is showing a lot of promise is for simulating materials and chemicals and other pieces of it. If you think the world that you interact with around us, and this is a conservative estimate, is that 96% of the products that we interact with every day have touched some kind of chemical process. And so if we can look at new ways of thinking about those chemical processes through quantum computing, new ways of realizing that, and that full potential of that will ultimately depend on quantum networking.
Excellent.
And that does remind me of another aspect of quantum computing or quantum information, which is about doing climate science type of progress. And in particular, those chemical processes are often inefficient. And one of the applications of quantum computers is to find more efficient ways to handle chemicals or chemical processes.
Yeah. Well, we have another few questions. We'll get to at least one more from Slido. AI and quantum computing are becoming the next big things in tech. Wondering if there are any links between the two. Can one help solve challenges of the other?
Maybe I was just at a workshop on AI and quantum a couple weeks ago, so it's top of mind with this. I would say we're learning. There's a lot to learn still. It's early days within this, but they're showing a lot of promise, both for AI, for quantum. I think that's near term with some of this, looking at the maturity of AI, but also for quantum, for AI as well, and looking at how we're looking at computing and other ways that will lower energy requirements for the side of it. So a lot more to come, but I would say the headlines you look at, read them with a grain of salt and tease through it. But I think AI is one where we can see touching all different processes of quantum, from being able to simulate quantum circuits or look at quantum error correction and helping with that, which is a really, really tough challenge to look at, and lots of different elements with regards to quantum. So still early days, really excited about it. But I think a way to think about quantum and AI as well is, I find sometimes we tend to think of high performance computing as one silo and AI as one silo, and quantum is one silo. We're not going to be using quantum computers on their own. You're going to have your QPU interacting with a GPU, interacting with the CPU. So I tend to think about this as next frontier computing, and what's the intersection of all of these as they go forward. And actually CEDAR is probably a great space to be looking at this as SFU and some other places. But early days, but I'm really excited about the potential there. Excellent.
Well, our little screen tells us we're in our last couple of minutes of this panel. Before finishing up and thanking the panel, maybe a couple of observations. One is, we've talked about today quantum networking with some great analogies, like the transportation analogy, and about the need to provide leadership within Canada, but for Canada also potentially to be a leader in the world. And and that we're a country with the second highest number of SMEs out there. So it does seem like a big effort is needed in coordination and collaboration, is one of the messages that I would take away from this. If you're going to do a moonshot, it's not, that's a lot of different people get coordinated in order to get that shot to the moon. Any comments on how to bring the community together? Where does the leadership need to come from in order to coordinate a small country, but a big country like Canada?
I think it can't be just at one level. I think it's got to happen at many levels and across all the different sectors. So we already, of course, have the National Quantum Strategy, we have the Quantum Advisory Council, and then all the members of the Quantum Advisory Council have networks and different sectors that they represent. So there's already that structure in place. I think it's just about gathering all of that and having perhaps more of these sort of structured national dialogues, and have some of our political leaders as well, be making some commitments. Because otherwise, how are we going to get all of this to happen?
I think we've already begun. The National Quantum Strategy will be publishing some roadmaps. So the community did do some large consultations to what does that look like, that we have this mission here. And you're right, Shahini, we do need to kind of bring folks truly together to do things, and then do the hard part of this in Canada and the world. We need to make decisions and pick a direction to go. But I think we have some good potential there. If we can really bring the community, can we start aligning our tools? And we'd love to get there.
And I think we've brought the community together, and feedback that I hear talking to different government stakeholders in particular is they've never seen a community, an emerging technology community that's mobilized already. So for example, with QIC, we work with 70 organizations across the country on this. Most of those are Canadian controlled SMEs, but some of those are the foreign companies with the presence here, and also the ecosystem builders that are part of that. So the community is coordinated on this. We didn't have this with AI. We still don't quite have this with semiconductors either. So there is an opportunity that we have that. I think we need a big, the capital is a real requirement in this. We've talked about it a little bit, and some of the infrastructure, some of this involves regulated infrastructure as well. There are dual use considerations. So having the political will to go and see this through. And I'd say with that, at the end of the day, the political will is we need Canadians to come along with this and come along with this dream as well, because it's ultimately their tax dollars that are behind this and them that are going to benefit for it.
Okay, well, we'll use our human networks to create quantum networks is the solution I take from that conversation. And the screen became red. So now I have to harshly wrap us up. But I did want to mention one more thing, and that is that the United Nations proclaimed 2025 the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology. And according to the proclamation, this year-long worldwide initiative will, quote, be observed through activities at all levels aimed at increasing public awareness of the importance of quantum science and applications. So I think it's going to be a great year for human networking to build quantum networking over the next year or so. So I'd like to ask our audience to put our hands together and thank our panelists for their insightful contributions to the topic of quantum networks today.